In this series, you will learn how to stitch a kurti. We shall start with stitching the interfacing along the neckline. To learn how to make the pattern and cut the fabric, watch the previous videos. To stitch the kurti, you will need your cut fabric, a sewing machine, thread, some pins, and a pair of scissors. Place one of the two necklines under the needle. We shall start by stitching the folds of the interfacing piece in place. With the pin side facing up, start stitching a 1/4 of an inch from the edge of the fold. Remove the pins one by one as they approach the needle. When you reach the corner, with the needle still inserted into the fabric, lift the presser foot and pivot the neckline by 90 degrees. When you reach the end, stitch off the edge and cut the thread. You can now repeat the same step on the second interfacing piece. Once this is done, take the front piece of the kurti and spread it on the table with the back surface facing up. Place the interfacing against the neckline as shown. Align their edges and fix them together by attaching a series of pins. Place one end of the neckline under the needle and start stitching the interfacing all the way to the other end of the neckline. If you don't feel comfortable with curve stitching, watch the video on making proper stitches. Remove the pins one by one as they approach the needle. Proceed around the neckline and stitch off the edge when you reach the end. Cut the thread and snip a series of small cuts into the seam allowance at regular intervals along the neckline as shown. This helps the interfacing sit flat along the curve of the neckline. Now, bring in the interfacing under the cloth as shown and finger press the seam so it settles into the fabric. Once this is done, roll the interfacing over the neck and inside the garment so we don't see the seam joint. Adjust the fold of the neckline so that it is uniform. Place one end of the neckline under the needle and start stitching along the edge. For a better finish, try to stay as close as possible to the edge of the neckline. Proceed around the neckline and stitch off the edge when you reach the end. Cut the thread. To fix the extra fabric created by the seam, run a second stitch parallel to the one you have just made as shown. Place the neckline under the needle and stitch about a 1/4 of an inch further from the edge. Remember to always keep the needle inserted in the fabric when you need to pivot. Now, cut away the extra portion of the interfacing piece. Check the stitch for consistency. Repeat the same process to stitch the interfacing onto the back neckline. You have now learned how to stitch interfacing to the neckline of a kurti. Watch the next video to learn how to join the front and back pieces.